Well, good morning from sunny Southern California. We appreciate those of you who are joining from all throughout the world. We'll get started with this, our first installment for the year in the emergency solutions industry. I appreciate the help of my colleague Brenda Martinez, and we may or may not hear from Brenda during the webinar today. Thanks to all of you who have joined. We have folks from all around the world who have joined today. Our focus is going to be GIS for the PSAP in 2020 and what we at Esri are focusing our efforts on. Today, after I take a brief moment to share what our focus points will be for the year, we're going to be privileged to hear from two of my colleagues, Scott Ottman and Chris Fox from our solutions team, who are going to share the new addressing data management tool that's been created for those of you who have Esri technology. This is really an exciting time for us because it is the culmination of several years of work, and Scott will launch into that in a few moments. But let's get right into a quick overview of what we are planning to focus on in 2020. Some of it is a repeat from last year as we continue our efforts. There are a few new items that we will touch on. We're going to cover address data management today in detail, but I'll cover a few points on that as we begin. We'll also continue the discussion on the digital transformation of data using hubs, either in ArcGIS Online or in Enterprise. We have seen a great uptick in the number of agencies who are embracing this ability to create a geospatial cloud and digitally manage your data, and I'll touch briefly on that, as I will continue to talk about the transformation that needs to occur and the migration from two-dimensional data to three-dimensional data. We will continue to discuss web applications in 2020, and an area new for 2020 will be insights for ArcGIS. So business intelligence capabilities for the PSAP and command and control. But let's jump right into it. We have made great progress in the area of improving our address databases, and many of you have made the change from just having data held within jurisdictional boundaries to creating other tool sets to help you manage when wireless calls come in to your PSAP and show that that actually is an address outside of your jurisdiction. Some of you are doing it through ArcGIS Online to back up that information. Others have simply created buffers around your jurisdictional boundary of your neighboring jurisdictions so that you can capture and more quickly transfer those calls to the appropriate PSAP. And while we have become quite good still at managing this two-dimensional data set, we're now moving from addresses just geocoded to the centroid of a piece of parcel to being able to do it to the rooftop and in some cases to the front door or a driveway. We need to begin thinking more seriously about this transformation three-dimensional location data, with challenges from the FCC beginning as soon as next year for indoor location accuracy and indoor routing. It's imperative that you begin to embrace a three-dimensional address database mindset, and then have the ability to start taking advantage of tools like our routing tools for more reliable routing so that we can get our first responders to a dispatchable location more quickly, or simply be able to understand areas, service areas, and how far an individual patrol unit can travel in 5 minutes time or in 3 minutes, and reversing that mentality of thinking how far could a suspect travel from the time of a call for service and the time that it's received. Be able to handle basically a traveling salesman challenge of how do I move my resources through a series of stops It might be to help a firefighter travel from one location to another to do site visits. But how do we do that in the most efficient manner possible? Each of these are tool sets that are available today for you to start embracing in the ArcGIS environment. The next area will be this continuation of hub, or this digital transformation and management of data. In this example, we're looking at a hub that's been created by the Department of Homeland Security. And as we search through this, we can see that all kinds of critical with location information has been maintained within this set. Here we can see the data, we can manage the data, we can share the data, and the really exciting thing about this concept of moving to a digital hub is that you can continue to maintain the authoritative responsibility for data and then choose who you're going to share that data out with. And I think equally important, not only who you're going to share it out with, but the ability to terminate who has access to that data as circumstances change. These are popping up all across the United States and abroad, and we're seeing literally hundreds and hundreds of hubs being created for regional sharing. This is an incredibly great and powerful tool that we hope that you're accessing as part of your Esri licensing. It's a great way for us to also, as we think about this digital transformation, look at the internal business systems that you have. In the PSAP, the computer-aided dispatch solution, and the business tool that becomes in being able to understand the challenges that you're facing and to make forecasts or recommendations. Well, it might be the records management solution that's used by police, fire, or EMS, or any number of other business systems like the location of fire hydrants, or maybe the location or the names of people who have outstanding arrest warrants. But as we look at these internal sources, then how do we analyze that against this incredible Internet of Things resource that's available as we reach out and look at sensor data like weather or live traffic or social media, and then bring those together inside of this geospatial cloud where we can start to analyze it, interrogate it, understand it better, and then create usable products that those in the field can really take advantage of, not only to understand a problem, but to collaborate on a challenge and be able to collect information in the field and send it back to the organization. As we work on this process, we have to keep in mind, and we at Esri, I think, are doing a good job of this, is that there are capabilities out there that are locked down and capabilities that are more open. Esri believes in the value of open source software, and we continue to support those values. But in a public safety environment, we also worry about the challenges that creates from a cybersecurity standpoint. So we just reiterate the fact that while we trust and believe in open source, we also understand the need to remain closed sourced in some areas and to leverage those open standards and specifications so that we can share intelligence. I loved a quote made by the president of Esri, Jack Dangerman, when he said, "We realize that good ideas come from many places, and we are excited to see how ArcGIS users can customize and share their projects with open source software. Please know that we are embracing this, and we are cautiously helping the public safety community manage that," which helps us as we look at things like data and security to understand that Esri continuously embraces embedding security into the entire DNA of the ArcGIS platform. So please take advantage of the security pages at Esri on our website and understand some of the workflows and tool sets that we have available for you as you look at your security standards within your organization. The next area that we will continue to focus this really fun challenge, I think, of migrating our data from a two-dimensional space to a three-dimensional space. And there are already tools in place to help you do this. Scott and Chris will talk about those specific to the challenge of address data management. This is going to help us also in the area of indoor location accuracy and in the ability to route indoors. It will help us in collaborating with BIM models, building information models. And as you can see in the examples shown, it's going to also give us some powerful analytics to solve problems, to understand the height of buildings or the interior space of buildings, to be able to manage parade routes or the route of a dignitary and know all of the areas where there might be cover and concealment should turn sour. Or on the bottom right, the ability to measure not only in 3D, but to look at things like the positions of potential snipers and vulnerabilities or anti-sniper positions. And then to move in and be able to embrace an indoor infrastructure and understand what's happening indoors. These create some really interesting challenges for all of us as we work through the policy and procedure that's going to be necessary as you move into a three-dimensional environment. And we're excited to be able to provide thought and help in that regard. I love this example from our prototype lab of data from San Diego of calls for service and taking wireless caller location information off of the mobile device. Here you can see we're creating a bubble, that uncertainty range that you see on your mobile device that says you are somewhere within this area. We now can do that not only in a two-dimensional sphere, but in a three-dimensional sphere, so that we can say that caller happens to be between the first and the third floor in the southwest corner of the building. And then beyond that, to take these locations and add additional geoprocessing so that we can solve problems like, show me where the nearest unit is that's backing up this police officer, or give me directions to the closest hospital. Not to mention the ability to bring in other sources of information like real-time traffic feeds or weather feeds and other kinds of things that will help us in understanding the challenges that are faced as things unfold in an operation. I like this example, and I especially like the name of it. This is Cool Maps, New York City. It shows in real time police calls for service coming in, three-dimensional dashboard that shows us what's happening in each of the boroughs. It provides cameras and the ability to access the CCTV system within the city, the ability to understand the view of the city. And in this case, rather than showing the buildings from an aerial view, they're shown grayed out, and even so that you could make them transparent and see through them, but still get a sense for the 3D infrastructure. We can see geoprocessing occurring here, showing how many times law enforcement had responded to a certain location by creating that external cone. These are really fun ideas that are helping us understand how we can visualize real-time information and make decisions from it. In the state of Maryland, they're using this same capability in Operations Dashboard to understand all of the challenges at wintertime of where snow removal is needed, or where they're applying salt on the roadways to mitigate the risks there, or managing every stoplight in the state and getting alerts when a stoplight is not functioning. Great application. In the state of Illinois, being able to see all of the traffic accidents that are happening and be able to have that come in and analyze it so that we understand areas of the state where there are greater levels of risks, how many fatalities are occurring, and what the severity of those accidents are. These are all just great examples and kind of fun to look at. As we think about this idea of web applet for the organizational success, we wanted to remind you that there is a suite of developer tools that are available for those who are creating web applications or mobile applications. There are APIs and SDKs that are readily available, and again, resources to help you. These apps have been proven on FirstNet, Verizon, Sprint, and T-Mobile. These are tools that are working and are available for iOS and Android, and we encourage you to take advantage of the web application availability that you can get by going on the website. I like this example from the city of Philadelphia because it teaches a really important principle using operations dashboard for ArcGIS. In the upper left-hand corner, you'll see my mouse circling. Here we have live Waze data coming into the dashboard. So we're collecting information from social media. In the center left, we have all of the CAD calls. In this particular case, it's coming from a Motorola Premier One CAD. We see metrics across the bottom that are telling us what's happening, and metrics across the top showing where each of the calls for service are in the queue, how many are waiting, how many have been dispatched and on scene. In the upper right-hand corner, though, this is kind of exciting. It's also accessing data from the city streets department so that we can see areas where roadways are maybe being torn up to work on a sewer system. These would be areas that become conflict for responding first responders to know that they have to reroute around those. And in the center right, citizen tips. So again, accessing and grabbing social media. So we see in this map or in this dashboard as we look at it, a series of really cool things that are happening. We see secure data that's locked down and being able to be brought in and managed. We see unsecured data like social media that's flowing in, but they're placed into an environment where operations dashboard becomes this powerful canvas that people can design what's needed for their specific operation or assignment. A really neat thing that's been happening in the last couple of years, and we hope that you'll take advantage of that. This example I showed last year, but I love the example and I want to show it again. In the city of South San Francisco, they were working a serial killer case, and they were going to go out and go house to house and collect information. The GIS manager thankfully heard about it, and using collector and operations dashboard in a couple of hours, not months, a couple of hours, created a collection tool that could be used in the field and in the command center to understand what's going on. In Georgia, after some problems with location accuracy, an agency used Survey 123 to create a simple tool to just collect address information and validate that so that the address database could be updated. In Ogden, Utah, the police department created a dashboard that just collects information and puts it out for the MDT and the patrol car on an iPad or other mobile device, and in the real-time crime center, including being able to reach out to third-party applications like Google Street View to enhance the experience. And one of the things that I really like is they also went beyond that and went in and grabbed all of the ABL data off of the patrol cars and the fire apparatus, and can now manage and understand and watch in real time the location of every official city vehicle as it moves throughout the jurisdiction. And I'm going to just pause long enough to let that play. It's on the screen now, but see that that action is happening in real time and being able to be monitored by those that have responsibility for that. These tools and applications and solutions are available. We hope you're exploring our website and taking advantage of those. Scott and Chris are going to talk about those in a minute. And I want to end with our other push this year, which will be for ArcGIS, the ability to bring business intelligence to the PSAP and the command and control center. It's part of the Esri geospatial cloud, and it helps you bring your data together to truly analyze and interrogate it and then deliver really insightful results. So we hope that you'll also stand by for presentations on that. These tool sets have been made for every public safety industry. We have a huge partner pool consisting of thousands of partners, many of which work in the public safety space, who spend 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, trying to create tool sets to help you. If you would, take a quick screenshot of this and just see some of the upcoming events. Also get the QR code so that you can download our ebook, and you'll have my contact information here. And with that, I want to turn the time over to my colleagues Scott and Chris as they explore this amazing new product that they have been working on for a number of years, the Address Data Management Solution. So with that, Scott, Chris, the time is yours.
Okay, thanks a lot, Mike, and thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us today and learning more about the addressing solutions. My name is Scott Ottman, and I lead our state and local government solutions. And with me today is Chris Fox, who's going to share with you some of the work we've been doing to enhance our addressing solutions. I want to spend a few minutes just setting context for the work we're doing. As most of you on this call and webinar already know, addresses are a fundamental part of state and local government functions. At the local level, they're probably one of, if not the most essential data layer that we manage, and they're used in many of the 911 functions that Mike did a good job articulating previously. They're used throughout permitting and assessment and change notice processes, water and sewer billing, and are really the foundational element for many of the key business systems that we manage at the local level. More recently, obviously, we've seen state agencies become actively involved in building address repositories and addressing systems to not only support Next-Gen 911, but to also improve the quality of their voter registration, health and human services that are delivered to key stakeholders in the community. And ultimately, they realize that having access to authoritative address information and being able to organize business content around that location is critical to the work they do. So as we started developing addressing solutions, and more recently, as we started updating and enhancing the existing solutions we have, we really wanted to address some key business challenges. The first thing we wanted to do is help local governments develop an authoritative address repository. And when we say an authoritative address repository, for us, what that means is not only the road center lines and address ranges you may use for dispatching and routing functions, but also authoritative inventories of site addresses and postal addresses. Essentially, you can think of this as your single version of the truth that can be used not only in public safety workflows, but also in those other key workflows like permitting, billing, and even voter registration at the local level. And so we wanted to support those diverse information needs. We wanted to help you leverage that authoritative repository in a whole variety of other systems so you can kind of publish and share that content for use in your other ArcGIS applications or even other business systems that you manage and use in your organization. You know, addresses is much like kind of painting a bridge. You're never done. So we also recognize that as you develop that address repository, you also want to have ways to continuously improve that. And those could be simple audit checks you're running on information you're loading into your CAD system. It could also be feedback you're getting from key stakeholders and other business units as they're producing mailing addresses or they're using mailing addresses to mail out maybe assessment change notices. But ultimately, we wanted a way for you to continuously improve that information through a variety of different stakeholders, take that feedback out in the field and validate it, and then ultimately use that information to improve the integrity of your address repository. And finally, as we've seen with Next-Gen 911 and other initiatives that are happening at the regional or county, regional, and even state level, when necessary, we know that you need to aggregate that information from authoritative sources and share it out in a standard format, and we have solutions to help you do that as well. So as I mentioned, we've had some address solutions that are available to ArcGIS users for many years now, and they are address data management has been one of our more popular solutions. On the left-hand side of this slide here, you see the existing solutions we have for ArcMap and many other pieces of the ArcGIS platform. And early this year in Q1 with the release of ArcGIS Pro 2.5, we're going to be releasing some updates to those solutions. And what you'll see is we've been working very hard to take our address data management solution and a set of tools that help you do continuous quality control on those addresses called Data Reviewer for Addresses and provide you a new data management solution with ArcGIS Pro. And Chris is going to spend the bulk of our time today showing you that. Those workflows I talked about to continuously improve through feedback from stakeholders and the field verification process you may want to be implement are now available in a new solution called Address Field Operations, which has a forum that allows you to collect that feedback, a way to process and assign that to appropriate field workers, and then ultimately conduct field canvasses or surveys to collect information. And as I mentioned a few seconds ago, we also have a solution available called Community Addresses that allows maybe county agencies that want to aggregate information from their local municipalities, or perhaps you're a regional agency that wants to aggregate address information, or even a state agency that wants to aggregate that address information from those key stakeholders. So what you'll see today is a sneak peek of the new addressing solutions that we will be shipping with ArcGIS Pro 2.5, and that's slated for early Q1 of this year. So it's really hard to have an addressing conversation without talking a little bit about the content that you manage in your addressing systems. And what we've done is really look holistically at those diverse address needs I mentioned earlier in the slides, and think about how you organize that information in ArcGIS. And as we did that, what you'll notice when you begin to take a closer look at the solutions we've developed is that we've incorporated a lot of the national standards that exist today. We've been working actively with NENA over the last several years, and what you'll see and paying attention to the Next Gen 911 guidelines that they've been developing, and what you'll see in this new version of our addressing solution is that we've incorporated much of that content, if not all of the mandatory and optional requirements into this new addressing solution. So you'll have that out of the box. And at the same time, we've also taken advantage of other standards that exist for things like mailing addresses and other key data sets, and incorporated them as well too. With the solution, you'll be able to you can discover exactly what those address layers look like. So what attributes are on each, the roads, the site addresses, and other key data elements by exploring the data dictionary. And so we've documented everything, so it's very easy for you to start to think about how your content can be leveraged in this new solution. So those address layers are really a foundational element of the data management workflow, and really serve as the central repository of content that you can then syndicate to other business applications and other uses within ArcGIS. So without additional context, what I'd like to do is just turn it over to Chris now and have him really spend the bulk of our time today showing you the new address data management solution and talking about how this solution helps you manage those authoritative repositories of address information. And then we can come back and take some questions. So Chris, why don't you take it from here?
Thanks, Scott. So in talking about the address data management solution, I want to talk about what you'll get when you deploy the solution to your organization. So you'll get a zip file that will contain an ArcGIS Pro project. You'll get some toolboxes, some databases, and a task that is included with the project that will walk you through some of the key workflows with managing your address information. In terms of the databases that you get, you'll get two databases. One will be a sample database that contains sample data from Naperville that will allow you to explore the workflows in the solution using a subset of some sample data, so you can play around with it, get an understanding of what it can do. And then when you're ready to start leveraging the solution with your own data, we provide a schema database that you can set your spatial reference on, load your content into, and begin managing your address information. We provide some toolboxes that have some geoprocessing tools that automate some of the workflows that I'll show in this demonstration. And really the key component is that task. The task is going to walk you through the workflows that I'm going to demonstrate for you today, and really provide the context for why you would use these workflows, and really highlight the tools in ArcGIS Pro to help you accomplish those workflows. So when you start the task, the first thing is understanding the address data management project. So this text will introduce what is included in the project, a series of address layers, like Scott mentioned, that incorporate some of the content guidelines from national standards, the task that helps you manage the information. We've configured in the databases attribute rules that streamline the editing workflows. So if you're familiar with our ArcMap solution of address data management, we provided an add-in called Attribute Assistant. And that Attribute Assistant would respond to editor events when features are created or updated and trigger updates or changes on the features themselves. So you could automate some of the editing workflows. When you created a new feature, it would automatically update an attribute of a corresponding feature. Well, now in ArcGIS Pro and the new capability of attribute rules that are available in file and enterprise databases, we've been able to configure the majority of those common rules that we had in attribute set and the Attribute Assistant add-in right in the attribute rules. So we don't have to provide a custom add-in, they come delivered with the database. And really the power, one of the main advantages of attribute rules over Attribute Assistant is those rules are executed in the database. So if I were to take this to enterprise and publish these as services that I then consume in other web applications or field applications, those rules are still going to execute in the database. Whereas in ArcMap, Attribute Assistant only executed in ArcMap. If I took it out and edited those data sets in other applications, those rules wouldn't fire. So it really provides a platform capability to ensure integrity of my address information. And the final thing that we include is a series of data reviewer checks that further help you improve the quality. So after you've input features, you can run a series of reviewer checks that will validate integrity of address ranges along center lines, validate that site address points have the necessary information populated and that they are near a corresponding road center line that they're associated with. So when you're ready to start using it, the first step is to run through the how to use steps, and we're going to use the sample data to run through these workflows. So one of the primary things that you're going to do, for example, if you have a new development and you need to manage the road center lines that are in the community, is to add new roads to my address information. The way that we're managing the integrity of uniqueness of road names across the community is via a master road names table. And that master's road name table drives an index that ensures that we are uniquely identifying all the road names that are in our community. So if I need to add a new road that has a new road name that doesn't exist in my master road name table, the first step is going to be to add a new record to this table. So in this new development, the road is tentatively going to be West Oak Street. So in the road pre-direction, I'm going to select West. In the road name, I'm going to type Oak. And in the road type, I'm going to type Street. And when I select that, and I scroll over to road full name, you can see that an attribute rule fired, and it combined all the aspects of the road designation, the road pre-direction, the road name, and the road type, and combined those and calculated a full road name. If I added other characteristics of the road, like a post direction or post modifier, that full road name would update to reflect those. So that's an example of an attribute rule that's firing automatically when I make an edit or I create a feature. This is going to be in Naperville, and I'm going to set the status to pending because it's currently a proposed development. All right, so I'm going to save my edits and go to the next step. Next, we need to update that road name index. So the way that this is working is we're creating a domain that we're using on our road center lines and our site address points, and we're driving that domain from this master road names table. So we have a geoprocessing tool that goes through and creates or updates the domain in the database to reflect all the entries that are in this master road names table. So when I run this, now I'm going to have a new entry in that domain for West Oak Street. Okay, now we're going to construct the new road. So one of the key things that we want to do as part of our road data set is maintain the integrity of the address range along the road center line. And we want to, when we construct a new road, split the road at the intersection of that new road we're creating. But when we split the road, we also want to maintain the parity and the address ranges for the segments that we split. So what we have configured in one of the attribute rules is when I construct a road and I intersect an existing road, it's going to split that road at the intersection. And now if I go to my next step, I'm going to select both of those roads. So now I have two mill streets that have been split at that intersection. And if we look at the first part of the road, where it used to be, I think it was 101 to 144 or something, I can't remember exactly, but now it's 1001 to 1031. And then the next segment picks up at 1033 to 1044. So just based on the interpolated distance along the roadway, it split the road at that intersection and calculated a new address range for each segment to maintain the integrity and the parity of the address range. For my new road, what I'm going to do is type in the new attributes. So this road is going to begin on the left side at 101 and go to 299. And then on the right side, it's going to go from 100 to 298. And then for our full road name, we're going to find that new West Oak Street that's in the domain that's driving that was driven from that master road name table, and hit apply. Okay, so we've constructed our West Oak Street. The next thing we can optionally do is maintain a set of road name aliases on that road name. So an alias could be a vanity name of a street. It could be a different, it's different from a county or state designation, which we maintain on the original street. So if I go to this local street, I can maintain the county route. If this was a state route, I could maintain that on the state route. But a road name alias is another designation for the road that we can maintain optionally in a related table. So if I add a new record to this related road name alias table, you can see I have similar schema where I can provide the direction, the road name, the road type, and the full road name will automatically get calculated from that. I don't need an alias for this road, so I'm going to delete that and finish off this task. Okay, so we've added our new road. I'm going to save my edits, clear the selection. The next step is adding site address points. So when I enter this task, one thing I did is I turned on some road direction arrows so I can see visually the direction of the roadway. This is important because that from and to address range is going to determine the direction of the road is going to determine the direction that those addresses are incremented as I move along the road center line. The way that we're going to construct site address points is we're going to place a point along the roadway that typically corresponds to something like the driveway location or the curb cut. Essentially, it's the location along the roadway where we're estimating what the address number of that address should be. So if I select one of these templates, I want to construct some site address points on the left side of the road. So the road's going this direction, so left side is south of the road. When I select that template, I can populate some optional parameters. So I want to offset the address by 50 feet, and I'm going to say the driveway is about here and place the point. I'm going to move down the roadway a little bit further and place another one. And what you can see if I zoom in a little bit is you can see the address number is showing up next to the site address point. So the address range, if you remember, of this street was on the left side 101 to 299. So this address point is I don't know, approximately 25% along the road line. So 163 is maybe a little more than 25%. So it's just based on the distance along the roadway. We estimated that this address point or this address number should be 163. You can always modify this. So if I see related to that address point is this 249 site address point, I could always come in here and change it physically to the specific number it needs to be. But this just gives you a good starting point based on the distance along the roadway, what the address number should be. Some other things you can do with these construction tools that kind of automate workflows is, let's say, for example, I need to create a new commercial development where there's going to be 5 address points off of the same driveway entrance. So in this example, I'm going to offset to the right side of this North Mill Street 100 feet. I'm going to create 5 address points, and I'm going to increment the address number by 2. So now when I construct these address points, it constructed 5 address points or site address points, each incremented by 2. So it started at 156. That was based on the distance along this road segment and the address ranges of the road. And then it incremented each following address by 2. I could then take and move these points to their corresponding location, but it really just automated that workflow of constructing those site address points for me. If I undo this, another example I want to show is, let's say, for example, this is an apartment complex where we have multiple units. In that scenario, we might create, let's say we have 2 floors, 5 units on each floor. So we're going to create 10 site address points, but we don't want to increment the value because they all have the same address number. So I'm going to construct 10 points at that location. They all have the same site address number, but they might have different floor or unit designations. So I'm going to select 5 of these address points and say that the alternate or the address unit type is, for all of these, is building A. We'll apply that. You can see the full address updated to include building A. Then we're going to say that 5 of the units are on floor 1, hit apply, and then the other 5 units are on floor 2. I could then go further and say for each unit, I'm then going to give it its unit designation. So this is unit 1, this is unit 2, and I can continue that to keep drilling down and giving them the unique designations that they have. So this is a workflow for managing. The common example is something like an apartment complex or a condominium where things might not have a unique address number, but they have different designations that can help you understand where the unit is and route potentially in a 3D space to get to the specific unit. So I showed this workflow about updating the site attribute characteristics. So this is using the attributes view to manage the attributes of the new site address points that you just created. The next step is we can begin to move the site address points. So the address point will be offset by a specific distance that you specify when you create it. You can always select and move it to the exact location that you want it to be located at by using the move tool. So I'm going to move a couple of these. I can take these stacked points, and if I want to specifically place them in their location on the building, I can do that as well. So I'm just using the core out of the box editing tools to do some of this workflow. Next, we may want to add 1 or more postal addresses to an address point. So the address has a address number and street designation, but a postal address is different in a couple ways. So the way I can add a new postal address is from this postal address related table. I'm going to select add new to relationship. So I'm adding a new related postal address. When I start to populate the owner's name, for example, it's going to pull the site address into the postal address here. And then I can add some of the postal designations. And this is using some of the standards that Scott mentioned for postal addresses. The key distinction here is we wanted to allow you to specify the difference in terms of postal addresses between who is the owner of the address or the residence versus who is the occupant. It could be the same person. They might be different people. So you might need to maintain multiple postal addresses associated with the same site address. Once I've added my postal addresses, I'm going to maintain, or I may want to add multiple, one or more entrance points associated with the site address. So the entrance points have a lot of value for public safety workflows, or just having a better sense of how you get somebody to the address. The address itself, when it's on a corner lot, might be addressed off a particular road, but the driveway might be off of a different road, or it might be a large building and the best building access might be a different location from the location of the address point. So for example, let's say that this 163 West Oak Street actually has a building entrance on this side of the building. So I'm going to construct the building address or the building entrance. I'm going to select my site address point, and then I'm going to right click on the related site address table and say add selected to relationship. So now my site address has its related address point, the location that was used to establish its address number. It has its related one or more entrance points, and it has its related one or more postal addresses. So these are the ways that we're keeping the integrity of that data between the site address point and all the other related information that's critical for many of those workflows that Scott talked about earlier. The last thing that I want to really highlight in the demonstration is we talked about the idea that this was a proposed development. Let's say later in the process, it comes down that this road name is actually going to be renamed to Elm Street. So the way I can manage that is in my master road names table. If I come in and change my road name to Elm, what is going to happen is the new full road name is calculated, and then any related roads that had that previous name or any related site address points that had that name are all going to update to Elm Street from Oak Street. So it's maintaining the integrity between that master road name table and the road center lines and site address points that are associated. And the final step in that workflow is updating, again, that road name index domain to reflect the change in the master road names table. So when I finish this, it's just going to run that geoprocessing tool again and update the index. The final aspects in the task that I just want to briefly touch on and highlight for you is we provide some GP tools that allow you to flip the direction of your roadways. So if the geometry is in the wrong direction based on what the address ranges should be, you can select the individual roads and flip them. You can also switch what is the left side and right side address numbers that are defined on the roadway. You can create a series of intersection points that can be used for routing or geolocating that will create a point at the location of an intersection and pull the cross street information into a field. And we also provide a task that walks you through executing our data reviewer checks. So you can, what the data reviewer checks do are they find errors in the attributes and geometry of your address information. You can visualize those errors on the map. so you can quickly identify them, and the arrows will describe what the issue is and how you can resolve it. Once you've gone through the workflows with the sample data, we provide you a series of tasks that walk you through reviewing the schema that we deliver, helping you to find the spatial reference of that schema-only database to match your local spatial reference, walk you through configuring the map to point to that schema database, configuring the layers and the attribute rules if you want to make customizations to the workflows. We walk you through loading your data into that schema database so that you can start using the tasks with your own data. If you want to manage this in ArcGIS Enterprise, we have a task that describes how you can then copy those feature classes into your enterprise so that you can begin to manage them there. And if you want to extend the data reviewer validation checks, we have a task that walks you through how you can add your own rules or customize those rules. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Scott, who's going to wrap up some of the additional solutions that we're releasing as part of addressing later this month or early next month.
Thanks, Chris. So Chris just showed you a sneak peek of the new ArcGIS Pro address data management solution. We'll be shipping with Pro 2.5 when that comes out later Q1 this year. And as we mentioned, we recognize that that solution will be used primarily for folks within your organization who are using record drawings, new developments, new site plans to actually automate that information and make it available to your dispatching systems and other systems that use it. We also have another complementary solution that'll be releasing at the same time called Address Field Operations that allows you to take that authoritative repository and extend it and really connect with key stakeholders inside your organization or maybe even the public to actually help improve the quality and content of your address repository. So Address Field Operations has several components. It has a simple survey or form that allows stakeholders to enter missing address information that they may not see in your address repository. Once that feedback comes in, you can then allocate it to field staff with Workforce for ArcGIS and essentially assign that work activity to field staff in your organization who can then go out in the field and validate that the information that they provided in that feedback is in fact a valid address. At the same time, you can use the same field tools to potentially capture additional address information you may have missed. So let's say someone's reported a missing apartment address, and you go out in the field and you notice that there are several other missing apartment addresses as well in that same development, and you can collect all that information at the same time, bring it back into the office, and then ultimately use the solution that Chris showed you to add that information to your address repository. So address data management and address field operations really work together to provide you a comprehensive system that allows you to inventory your address information for a whole variety of needs in your organization, and then continuously improve that information and validate it through field work activities. The other thing I'll just point out again is that the community address solution, which is another part of this offering, allows you then to take that authoritative address information and then aggregate it up into other data sets that you may have in your organization or even that you may be sharing with other stakeholders like regional governments, state agencies, the like. So with that, that was a sneak peek of the new address solutions that we will be shipping with Pro 2.5 later in Q1. And Mike, we did have several questions that came in, so maybe I'll just pause for a minute and take a second to answer some of the questions we got. Is that okay?
That would be great. Thank you.
So the first question we have, and Chris, you can help me with these as well too, is we had a question that asked a little bit about kind of the road name elements and road name components. And they talked a lot about the different types of elements, the pre-modifier, I forget all the different ones we have, but they asked about compound street types. And I'll just mention that in that master road name table that Chris showed, we incorporated all of the types, both pre and post, that the NENA Next Gen 911 guidelines suggested and that the Postal Service suggests. And you'll see that we're using those standards when appropriate to account for that. So you should have everything you need to kind of account for those compound street types where you might have additional modifiers on the types of the suffixes. You'll also see that we use the postal standard designation for those as well too. And if there aren't enough there, then certainly you can obviously extend that master road name table to accommodate it. The other question or comment we got is about how do I move from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro? And it talks a little bit about how the attribute assistant, Chris, populated fields by pulling data from underlying maybe polygon features. So let's say, maybe I have municipal designations. Maybe I have, in the case of public safety, maybe I want to populate response areas on my roads. Can you do that with attribute rules now? And maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yes, you can do that with attribute rules. There's a function in Arcade where you can return intersecting features from another data source in the same database. And from that intersecting feature, you could grab an attribute and return it and update a field. So there's definitely those functions and capabilities. And I've seen several posts on GeoNet of users who have started doing that and are sharing their code with other users.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The other question, we got a question about alternate street names, and it asked about the relationship of site addresses to alternate street names. I'll just say that the alternate road names are really designated and used to manage the center lines. They are not incorporated into the site addresses. And we did that because what we found is that typically I'll just use the word authoritative, right, or a single road name was used for the site addresses and to get mailing information to it. So we just selected the primary, not the alternate. Now, saying that, if you did have workflows in your organization that required you to essentially create two site addresses, you could do that. One for the that's using the primary road name, and one that's using the alternate if you so chose to. But right now, it is not doing that. And I'm not sure. There was a question about address field operations. I didn't see the whole thing. Maybe it's the question was about, is address field operations available through ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise? And at the initial release, it's available with ArcGIS Online. But the technology that is available is also supported in ArcGIS Enterprise. And I don't think there are any technical reasons why you couldn't deploy it there. Maybe, Chris, you can think about that for a second.
Yeah, like Scott said, it will be initially available in online. We developed it in online, and capabilities have to make their way to Enterprise before you'll support it, but it should be available in the next release of Enterprise.
Yeah, and then I'll just follow up with a few more of these real quick, and then we can maybe follow up afterwards too. So then there's just a question, Chris, a little bit about address points and how they're used, and then what's the relationship to entrance points? Could you just maybe talk about that real quick?
Yeah, I think the primary workflow of the address point is to interpolate or estimate what an appropriate address number should be. So usually you would place the address point along the roadway at the driveway location of the address, which is the common way, one of the more common ways to estimate what that address number should be. At that point, the address point is kind of just metadata of the site address point. It's really not critical to the data itself. If you deleted it or removed it, it's not going to have any impact. But it really is just kind of driving that workflow of estimating the distance along the roadway and how the address number for the site address point should be calculated. The building address is more important. It's more explicit. The location of the driveway, especially if it's different from the address point, and also the building entrance that may be multiple locations around a building.
And then the last question I'll just hit is there was a few people that asked about what environments are the solutions supported in, and what the address data management solution that Chris showed you is going to be available for ArcGIS Pro 2.5. It will require the 2.5 release. And then address field operations will be supported initially in ArcGIS Online, but as Chris mentioned, it also can run in ArcGIS Enterprise environment. The content that is managed in these solutions could exist if you're using, let's just say, ArcGIS Online for address field operations, you could use a file geodatabase or ArcGIS Enterprise for address data management. And if you want to use your ArcGIS Enterprise environment for all of it, you could do that as well too. And you could have the content residing for address data management in ArcGIS Enterprise and the address field operations solution available there too. So it is flexible and it supports and leverages, you know, a simple file geodatabase for data management that small organizations may want to use, and a multi-user editing environment for larger organizations as well. So it supports both those things. So if we missed any of your other questions, we'll obviously review them after the webinar, and just want to be mindful of time. And with that, Mike, I'll turn it back to you if you then want to just wrap up with a few final comments for us.
Thanks so much, Scott and Chris. We appreciate it. On the screen, you'll see some of the partners that are dealing in the area of address database management. This was provided by our public safety partner manager. And again, these are folks that can help you, or please leverage the tools that Scott and Chris spoke of and improve those address databases so that we can get first responders where they need to be more quickly. Thanks to everyone for joining us. Our time is spent. We'll look forward to seeing you again in the next webinar, and wish you the very best as you move into 2020. Thanks again.